Yuki Tsunoda has undoubtedly been the driver that I have been impressed with the most so far in 2023. I don't think it's harsh to say that coming into the season, it really was all or nothing. Whilst he's shown gradual improvement throughout his career, for 2023 with Gasly gone, Yuki would now become the benchmark at AlphaTauri as the experienced driver, and that kind of pressure can really make or break a driver. I think Yuki's improvement, however, is almost emphasized by just how much of a disappointment he was as a rookie in 2021. Coming into Formula 1, Yuki was highly rated, and there's never been any doubt that he has a huge amount of raw ability. Just the way he skyrocketed through the junior ladder is a testament to that. In his first full season of racing cars, he finished third in Japanese Formula 4 in 2017. He would then win the championship in 2018. Graduating then to Formula 3, he would finish a solid ninth in his rookie season, taking a win along the way. And then moving up to Formula 2, he would finish a very impressive third in his rookie season. His mindset, however, graduating to the pinnacle of motorsport was almost embarrassing. He's admitted in later years that he was massively underprepared both physically and mentally. He underestimated the challenges of Formula 1 and just expected that his raw talent alone was going to be enough. In terms of the fitness level, which is the bare minimum you'd expect of a driver, he admitted that even a Franz Tost at the age of 65 was fitter than he was at the age of 20. What also made Yuki's rookie season even more disappointing is that, unlike 90% of most rookies, he was given an unbelievably good car for his rookie season. I actually tried to go back and think what rookies before Yuki were given a car as good or even better, and the only ones that came close were Lance Stroll in 2017 with Williams, Kevin Magnussen in 2014 with McLaren, and then you have to go back to Lewis Hamilton in 2007 with McLaren. The AlphaTauri AT02, despite finishing 6th in the Constructors, was undoubtedly the 5th best car and should have finished ahead of the Alpine. Gasly that season scored a podium in Baku, was a consistent point scorer, and also qualified in the top 5 9 times. Yuki, on the other hand, scored points just 7 times, which in that car was nowhere near good enough. In the races, his poor fitness meant that he literally couldn't do the entire race driving at the same level, which made his stints really inconsistent. And the number one thing that really affected him early on was that he always tried to drive flat out from the very first lap instead of building up his confidence and building up to the session. This is what resulted in what sort of became his trademark crashes. And because 2021 was the first year of the budget cap, those crashes, which were already costly, were under the spotlight and talked about even more inside the team, which put even more pressure on Yuki. As a person, especially as a rookie, he was very naive and also at times maybe a little bit too honest, which I think was a result of him not being that well media trained. Despite his poor rookie season, when it did get announced that the team had kept him on for 2022, his response was as candid as you'd expect, with him saying that he was surprised to be kept on because, in his words, "I keep crashing, and that is not a good way for the team." In a way, it's also something that made him a very interesting person because there was never any guessing of what was inside his head. At times over the team radio, he was hot-headed and way too aggressive, and even though he still has a little bit of that now because it's just part of his mental makeup, the team, along with Yuki himself, have managed to focus and channel that aggression into something a bit more productive. Since then, however, he has definitely improved a lot, both in terms of qualifying and more importantly with the consistency in the races. In 2021, Gasly almost whitewashed Yuki in qualifying 21-1 with an average qualifying gap, according to the race, of over half a second. And by the way, that one that Yuki managed to get came in the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi. In the races, Gasly was less dominant, but he still comfortably beat Yuki 16-5. In 2022, although Gasly still had the edge, Yuki improved a lot. In qualifying, the head-to-head was now 13-9 with an average gap of just over a tenth, and in the races it was 15-7 to Gasly. In 2023 up against De Vries, Yuki is currently 5-2 up in qualifying, being on average just under 2/10 quicker, but it's in the races where Yuki has really dominated, being 6-1 up on De Vries. The frustrating thing about watching Yuki improve, however, is that unfortunately, since he's come into Formula 1, as he's got better and better, the car has actually gotten worse year on year. The 2022 car was worse than 2021, and the 2023 car is worse than 2022. That has really been disappointing because on paper to a lot of people it probably just looks like Yuki is just driving at the same level that he always has been. But if you actually watch him closely, then you'll see that his perceived stagnation is actually a sign of how he's getting more and more out of the cars as they themselves are getting worse and worse. Despite that, his contribution of points compared to his teammate has also increased year on year. Compared to the total amount of points scored, in 2021 he contributed just 22.5% of the team's total points. In 2022 that increased to 34.3%, and so far as of recording, he has scored all of AlphaTauri's points this season. Statistics are one thing, but quite honestly, I think the eye test is what's impressed me most this season. Yuki has always been in the hunt for points in every single race, and his consistency is just night and day compared to what we've seen in his career. Even though he's only scored points twice, with 2 P10 finishes in Australia and Baku, he then backed that up with 3 P11 finishes just out of the points. Even in the last 2 races, in Monaco he was running in the points until being overtaken late on by the McLarens after having brake issues. And then I thought Spain was possibly his best race of the season until he was maybe unlucky to be given that 5-second penalty. If we actually look at Spain and just put that penalty to one side for a second, apart from the 8 drivers in the top 4 teams, Yuki would have gone on to finish in P9 only behind Esteban Ocon in a much better Alpine. The AlphaTauri, in my opinion, has been on average just the 9th best car, only ahead of the Williams. It's not been better than the Haas, it's not been better than the Alfa Romeo, it's not been better than the McLaren, and it's certainly not been better than the Alpine. And yet, despite that, if Yuki did finish P9 in Spain, he would have only finished 2 seconds behind Ocon on the road. All of the midfield teams have been very up and down this season, from race to race. But the one constant is that Yuki has always been in the mix for points. And you've got to wonder, how different would his season look if he was in a McLaren or an Alpine? Now, sure, there is very different pressures associated with those teams that you don't get at AlphaTauri, but it does feel like we're watching a driver who is being limited by his machinery. I also think that the way he's handled the arrival of De Vries has been perfect. Let's not forget that whilst the team kept Yuki on for 2023, he wasn't exactly a sure thing. De Vries actually came in the eyes of Red Bull as almost a like-for-like replacement of Gasly. Yuki, however, has not only dominated De Vries thus far, but he's actually turned himself into almost an undroppable driver because without him, AlphaTauri would be nowhere. Last year, Yuki finally became a driver who looked like he belonged on the F1 grid, and this year he looks like the class of the midfield in one of the worst cars on the grid. It's important though for him to also not get too comfortable. He's got to keep pushing, he's got to keep performing, and he needs to learn from his time with Gasly that to stay in Formula 1 and to possibly be of interest to other Formula 1 teams outside of Red Bull, he can't start to relax. In terms of Yuki's future, if he continues on this trajectory, I do think that he could become one of those really sought after quality midfield drivers like an Ocon, Norris or Gasly. The Red Bull route I think could be tricky because after the circus of drivers that they've had over the last 5 or 6 years, or what Checo has done to stabilize the team I think has been a huge part of their success. Yes, him and Max at times have a spiky but competitive relationship, but I think overall what Checo has brought is exactly what the team needed, and he rightly has a contract until the end of 2024. If Checo is still winning the odd race and still backing Max up, why break that up going forward? Aston Martin with their Honda tie-up I think could be a really exciting move, and I'm sure that Honda would love to have one of their own junior drivers in their own team. But firstly, 2026 is still a long way away, and in general that Aston Martin lineup is a bit of a weird one. Lance has a contract until the end of time, and if the cars keep being competitive and if Fernando Alonso keeps outperforming Lance, then why would he want to leave? In terms of the other sideways moves, Alfa Romeo with them becoming Audi joining either Zhou or Bottas, that could be a really interesting move. Maybe if Lando leaves McLaren in the next few years, or if something changes at Alpine, I think both of those could also be good options if Yuki keeps on delivering. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that I would love to see a Yuki and Pierre reunion at Alpine if Ocon decides to move on. For the short term, apart from Alfa Romeo, which might be available for 2024, all of the big moves that happened last year have kinda locked most of the drivers into their current teams for a while. Yuki's best bet, I think, is just to do a Gasly, sign a 1 or 2 year deal if he can, and just bide his time. Of course Red Bull are going to keep throwing young juniors at him like Lawson or Iwasa, and he has got to be ready to do to them exactly what Gasly did to him. Regardless, I am very glad to see Yuki finally start to live up to his potential. Having a good Japanese driver on the grid is also massive for the sport because of how passionate that country is for motorsport and Formula 1, and especially when you consider that we have Suzuka and Honda involved as well. It disappoints me to see AlphaTauri underdeliver because right now, I would love to see what a 2023 spec Yuki could do with a 2021 AlphaTauri again. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.